So that's where he started, and he did a great job. And Bob, because he was ambitious, wanted to do more stuff. So what happened was, a year after Bob got hired, they hired me to run the insurance department at Payne Webber. Now, I'm 31 years of age. I've been an insurance agent up until that point in time. I never managed a person or knew anything about corporate life, and I'm stuck in the middle of this thing, and I'm dealing with it. And 6 months after I take over, a company called Baldwin United goes under. Baldwin United is a piano company. But one of the things you should know back in the 80s, that when interest rates were about 18%, all of these different companies were building insurance companies because they didn't have, they were not like New York Life or MetLife that had all these bond portfolios deep underwater. They could just come out fresh, and so they were offering 15, 16% interest rates, and the place went nuts. And this is at a time, too, when basically the walls were coming down. You know, when I was a kid, stockbrokers did that, bankers did banking, and insurance people did that. So that was starting to come down, okay? And so that's where they're going. So this whole thing is moving, and Payne Webber's in the middle of it, and the bloody company collapses. And so here's the problem. That we had technology back then where there was a phone, a hotline. I could pick it up and I could talk to all 4,400 brokers. The problem is they could talk back. And I had absolutely no idea what was going on. And then I would see in the newspaper, Payne Webber said, and I said, Payne Webber, that's Joey, and I don't know what's going on. You know, so anyway, it was really unbelievable. I didn't know how to deal with it. So Bob inherits the insurance department. They said, all right, give Bob some stuff. So we gave him insurance and a few other places that weren't really critical to the firm. But he took it over, and I met him, and I thought he was about to fire me, you know, and he didn't. And what happened for the first 2 weeks, I kept calling him Ben because I thought his name was Benmosche. But it's Bob Benmosche. He cleared that up for me real fast. So anyway, 2 weeks into the job, I have to come back and tell him, you know, now Capital Life's a problem. And then there was also a company called Executive Life. Just so you know, when we had the junk bond phase, what happened was you had Executive Life and Victor Posner. All these people were cash cows. In other words, what people began to think was junk bonds were not junk. They just happened to be quality bonds with a higher coupon, which of course is nuts. It defies gravity, and it finally flushed out. So anyway, these insurance companies were just that. So there was a big problem with it after Baldwin, yet everybody was nervous and what have you. So Bob I said, this is Capital Life, it's a real problem. And he said, well, we better throw him out. I said, Bob, you can't do it, it's Glenn Holden. Glenn Holden's like John Wayne, you know what I mean? It's like one of these, you guys probably don't know who that is, but anyway, it's like John Wayne, you know? I said, you can't blow this guy out. He said, so Bob says, look, Joe, if there's an issue, we've lost a lot of credibility with this Baldwin thing, we got to start getting out in front of this thing. It's the right thing to do for the company. It's the right thing to do for Payne Webber. It's the right thing for our brokers and our clients, but also for that company, because if we can stem the tide and there isn't a run, it's there. And we have to do it for the right reason. I said, all right. So anyway, I wrote up this stuff. He said, Joe, this is really good, you know, what have you. I said, yeah, Bobby, we're going to really get this guy Holden. We're going to nail him, you know. And so anyway, I'm standing by the elevators, and it opens up, and Glenn Holden walks out. He's like 6'4", big guy. Hello, Joe, how are you? I go, hi, Mr. Holden. You know, you want some coffee? You know, I mean, he totally blew me out, you know. And then we get into a room, and there's like 50 people there, okay, 50 people. And Glenn Holden starts talking, and he's a powerful guy, you know. Well, he takes credit for oxygen, you know, one of those guys, you know. And he's going like, you know, well, you know, maybe you shouldn't take us out. Maybe you should just minimize our sales. And you see everyone going, yeah, because he's having his way. And I'm looking at Bob. He's just sitting there. And then he stops. It's like 20 seconds, nothing. And then Bob says, let me tell you why the answer is no. I said, who is this guy, you know? I said, is that an example of a simple declarative sentence, you know? And then he goes into all of the reasons why he couldn't do it. And what I'm telling you is it was really hard to be in that room and not be persuaded by this guy, but he was doing it for the right reason, and he did it. And then I just said, wow, this guy's something else. And so I walked out with him, and I said, yeah, Bob, we really did a number on him. Meanwhile, you know. So what happened was I go down to my office, the phone rings. It's Don Nicholson. He's the president of Payne Webber. He says, Joe, I have Glenn Holden here. Do we have to do this now? I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe we can, you know. And so I went to Bob. I said, Bob, you know, Don called. Yeah? And he said, what'd you tell him? I said, well, I said, come with me, you know. So he brings me up, and so I'm at the executive thing. I'm like 31 years old, you know, so wow, look at this one, you know. And you know, we walked into the president's office, so there he is talking to Don Nicholson. Don, you want to run the goddamn insurance department, you can go ahead and run it. But he's telling me there's a problem here. If we don't get out in front of this thing, we're going to lose control of it. It's the bad thing for... And he's going, and I said, you know, it was like Butch Cassidy and a Sundance Kid. Remember that movie? And Lord Baltimore was tracking him, and every time they looked back, they said, who is this guy? I said, who is this guy? I had never seen in any business transaction someone who would not only talk the talk, but walk the walk, and doing it for all the right reasons. And you know what that did for me? It inspired me to be able to stick to my guns and to do the right things. So one other story, because it's relevant to the future, is Bob was on me to get a New York company. Most of the companies we were selling on Wall Street weren't registered in New York because New York had the most stringent things, so he's beat me up. So this really happened. The guy from Dean Witter calls me up, said, you're going to do the Met deal? Yeah, of course. Hung up, looked up Met and went down. And one of the things that Bob, remember, right? So what happened was, what Bob did is we were going out, because one of the things, this was not an executive who sat in a room, okay? He was always out there. So we were out there, and this is 11% guaranteed from MetLife, Baldwin United collapsed. We went through a ton of stuff, and we did, in 2 weeks, they called up and said, we're gonna lower the rate. And I said, come on, give us 2 more weeks. And they said, yeah. Little did MetLife know what a wirehouse can do to you in 2 weeks. And we just blew the stuff out. We did like $100 million. And right after that, there was a meeting with all of the managers from Payne Weber, and Don Nicholson said, in my lifetime, I never thought I'd see insurance revenues bigger than equity revenues, and it happened. And the only reason I bring that up, because Bobby was like a little kid. He was like a 3-year-old, jumping up and down and there. So I just wanted to give you some of that background. I left Payne Weber after that. Bob went up in Payne Weber, and I built their annuity business, and then I started their fee-based planning and did a lot of stuff there. And Bob and I always stayed in touch, and he was getting dissatisfied with Payne Weber. And so one of the things I said, you really got to come over here, and you know, because MetLife could use you. And MetLife was going through some changes, not anything like AIG, but there was friction inside. That's what happens with companies. There were a lot of people who hated the salespeople, and so there was dissatisfaction and all this other stuff. So Bob shows up. He's running the field for us, and true to what Bob did. Remember, I got to leverage people? Bob first did. He went out and he talked to all of the reps. He went out and talked to all of them and said, you know, what you see is what you get, and they've heard that before. But, you know, the fact of the matter is he followed through that. And what he said, what you really have to do is give people a vision, and you give them hope. And then once you do that, you tell them that you care for them. And when people understand that, they'll kill for you. So he did a great job. He retired. He took the company public, which is no small task, right, to do. And you know, so that's what happened.